In this episode, we're going to talk about privacy incidents in a way that helps you respond quickly without losing your head, because speed and clarity matter when personal data may be at risk. For the Certified Information Privacy Technologist, CIPT, exam, incident questions are high yield because they pull together data lifecycle, roles, accountability, third-party risk, and user trust, all under time pressure. Beginners often imagine an incident as a single moment, like a hack, but privacy incidents include many events that involve unauthorized access, unintended disclosure, improper use, or even a design flaw that leads to systematic overcollection. The goal in an incident is not only to stop the immediate harm, but also to understand what happened, determine what data is involved, meet obligations, and prevent recurrence. Doing that fast requires a practiced sequence of thinking, not improvisation. By the end, you should have a mental playbook for what to do first, what to figure out next, how to coordinate roles, and how to make decisions that are defensible and user-respectful. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyberauthor.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. The first step in fast incident response is recognizing what counts as a privacy incident, because hesitation often comes from uncertainty. A privacy incident is any event where personal data may have been exposed, accessed, altered, lost, used outside its intended purpose, or handled in a way that could create harm to individuals. That includes technical events like misconfigured access controls, leaked logs, or compromised credentials. But it also includes operational events like sending a report to the wrong recipient or a vendor using data beyond the agreed scope. It can even include product behavior that violates stated notices, because a mismatch between promises and processing can create harm and regulatory risk. The point is not to label everything as a crisis, but to treat personal data events as requiring structured evaluation. A fast response begins with a low-friction reporting path so that potential incidents are surfaced early. The exam often tests whether you can identify an event as incident-worthy and choose actions that begin containment and assessment promptly. Once you suspect an incident, the next priority is containment, meaning stopping further exposure or misuse while preserving the ability to investigate. Containment might involve disabling access, pausing a data feed, revoking a token, or temporarily limiting a feature that is leaking information. A common beginner mistake is to focus on analysis first and delay containment, but privacy harm can increase with every additional minute of exposure. At the same time, you should avoid actions that destroy evidence, like wiping logs or making uncontrolled changes that erase the trail of what happened. A mature response balances stopping the bleeding with preserving the facts. This is where coordination with security response is critical, because security teams often have the tools and processes for technical containment and evidence handling. On the exam, answers that include immediate containment and evidence preservation tend to be stronger than answers that jump straight to public communication or long-term remediation. After containment, you move into scoping, which is the process of figuring out what happened and what data is involved. Scoping is where privacy technologists add huge value, because you translate technical details into privacy impact. You want to know what systems were involved, what data elements were exposed or misused, how many individuals might be affected, and whether the data could be linked back to identifiable people. You also want to know the time window, because that affects both the number of records and the likelihood that data was accessed or exfiltrated. Scoping includes understanding whether data was merely accessible or whether it was actually accessed, though you should be careful about overconfidence when logs are incomplete. It also includes understanding the downstream effects, like whether the data was shared onward or cached elsewhere. Beginners sometimes scope too narrowly by focusing only on one database or one application, but incidents often involve copies and logs, analytics stores, and third-party systems. A strong scoping mindset is broad at first and then narrows as facts emerge. Parallel to scoping, you need to activate the right roles using the same accountability thinking you learned earlier, because incident response fails when ownership is unclear. Security operations may be responsible for technical investigation and containment actions, while privacy is responsible for assessing privacy impact, aligning response with privacy obligations, and advising on communications and user rights implications. Legal is typically consulted to interpret obligations and manage risk, especially around notifications and external communications. Communications teams may be responsible for drafting messages, while leadership may be accountable for the final decision to notify users or regulators. Customer support and frontline teams should be informed early enough to respond consistently and avoid spreading misinformation. The key is that roles should be activated quickly and with clarity, because delays often come from uncertainty about who can approve what. On the exam, you might see choices that either involve too few roles or involve everyone without structure, and the best answer usually reflects focused coordination with clear accountability. A fast and effective response also depends on accurate classification of the incident's severity, because not every event requires the same escalation. Severity is not only about how embarrassing an incident might be, but about how likely it is to harm individuals and how difficult it will be to remediate. Factors include the sensitivity of the data, the number of individuals affected, whether the data was protected, whether misuse is likely, and whether the exposure is ongoing. For example, exposure of contact information can be harmful, but exposure of financial or health-related information can increase harm. Exposure of a delinked dataset may be less severe than exposure of fully identifiable records, but that depends on re-identification risk and context. Another factor is whether the event represents a one-time mistake or a systemic design flaw that could repeat. Severity classification guides how quickly you escalate, how you prioritize resources, and whether notification may be required. The exam often tests whether you can identify severity drivers rather than reacting based on emotion or assumptions. Notification decisions are where privacy incidents can become especially complex, and beginners sometimes think there is a single rule that applies everywhere. In practice, notification obligations vary by jurisdiction, by data type, and by context, and the exam is more likely to test your reasoning approach than a specific legal threshold. A sound approach is to base notification discussions on the facts you have scoped, the potential harms to individuals, and the applicable commitments and obligations the organization has accepted. This includes obligations that may come from laws, contracts, and your own promises in notices and policies. A strong response avoids premature statements before the scope is understood, but it also avoids unnecessary delay that could increase harm if people need to take protective action. This is why evidence and documentation matter, because you may need to justify why you did or did not notify and when. On the exam, answers that emphasize fact-gathering, consultation with appropriate stakeholders, and timely, accurate communication tend to be preferred over answers that either notify immediately without clarity or conceal the issue. User trust during incidents is influenced by tone and honesty as much as by speed, because people can detect evasiveness. Effective communication focuses on what happened, what data was involved, what the organization has done to contain it, what steps are being taken to prevent recurrence, and what individuals can do if action is needed. It also avoids blaming users for organizational failures, because that erodes trust and often increases complaint risk. Another trust factor is consistency, meaning public statements, support scripts, and internal briefings should align so users do not receive conflicting information. From a privacy technologist viewpoint, communication should also avoid revealing unnecessary personal details, because incident messaging can itself create additional exposure. Even if you are not writing communications, you should understand the principles that make communications effective and privacy-respecting. The exam may test this by offering answer choices that include oversharing or vague, non-committal statements, and the stronger option is usually clear, factual, and aligned with remediation. Remediation is the part of response that prevents recurrence, and it should begin early even while scoping continues. Remediation includes fixing the root cause, which may be a misconfiguration, a code bug, an access control weakness, a process gap, or a vendor management failure. It also includes addressing contributing factors like unclear roles, missing review steps, or inadequate monitoring that allowed the issue to persist. A common pitfall is to focus only on the immediate technical fix, and ignore the process changes needed to prevent the same mistake in a different form. For example, fixing a misconfigured bucket is necessary, but if the organization lacks change review and automated checks, similar misconfigurations will recur. Another pitfall is to add controls that create unnecessary data collection, like logging excessive personal data to investigate incidents, which can create new privacy risk. A mature remediation plan improves control effectiveness while respecting minimization and purpose limitation. Exam questions often reward answers that include both technical correction and process strengthening. Third parties introduce special challenges in privacy incidents because evidence and control may be partly outside your organization. If an incident involves a vendor, you need fast coordination to understand what happened, contain exposure, and obtain evidence. Contracts and procedures should define incident reporting timelines, cooperation requirements, and responsibilities for containment and communication. A blind spot is assuming the vendor will notify you promptly and with full detail without having an established channel and expectation. Another challenge is data footprint, because vendor incidents may involve copies of data and logs you do not directly manage, and you need to know how deletion, retention, and investigation will be handled. A strong response includes activating the vendor relationship owner, coordinating through defined channels, and updating internal assessments and user communications as facts develop. The exam may present a vendor incident scenario and test whether you treat it as the vendor's problem or as a shared accountability situation. The better answer usually emphasizes coordination, verification, and maintaining your own accountability. Documentation is not glamorous, but it is a critical part of responding effectively because it supports decision-making in the moment and defensibility later. Documentation includes a timeline of events, containment actions taken, scope estimates and updates, decisions made and by whom, communications delivered, and remediation steps planned and completed. It also includes preserving evidence in a way that supports investigation and avoids accidental alteration. Good documentation reduces confusion during handoffs, helps teams stay aligned, and supports post-incident review. Beginners sometimes see documentation as something you do after the incident, but you need it during the incident because memories become unreliable under stress. The exam often rewards answers that include maintaining an audit trail and coordinating through structured processes because that reflects mature operations. Documentation also supports learning because post-incident reviews depend on accurate records. To respond fast and effectively, it helps to have a mental sequence you can apply to any incident, regardless of the technology context. Start with detection and reporting, making sure the issue is surfaced through a clear channel. Move quickly to containment while preserving evidence, so harm does not continue. Scope the incident broadly at first, identifying systems, data elements, time window, and affected populations, and then narrow as facts emerge. Activate the right roles with clear accountability so decisions are made quickly and responsibly. Evaluate severity based on potential harm and likelihood, not on guesswork, and use that to guide escalation and communication planning. Coordinate notification decisions through facts, obligations, and appropriate consultation, and communicate in a way that is truthful, clear, and respectful. Begin remediation early, focusing on root cause and process improvements that prevent recurrence, and document everything so the response is consistent and defensible. This sequence matches the way many exam scenarios are designed because it reflects a mature, methodical approach rather than panic. When you can respond to privacy incidents fast and effectively, you protect individuals, reduce organizational risk, and maintain trust even in imperfect situations. The CIPT exam rewards candidates who can integrate privacy reasoning with operational discipline, because incident response is where theory becomes reality under pressure. If you keep your priorities straight, contain first, scope carefully, activate roles quickly, communicate honestly, and remediate root causes, you avoid the common pitfalls that make incidents worse. You also gain confidence because you stop improvising and start following a dependable mental playbook. Incidents are stressful, but they do not have to be chaotic, and your job as a privacy technologist is to bring structure, clarity, and respect for individuals into moments that could otherwise spiral. That is how you earn points on the exam and, more importantly, how you help organizations handle personal data responsibly when it matters most.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.